Hi.
Good afternoon.
All right, are we ready? All right, welcome. I'd like to go around the table and introduce everyone. Ms. Kane, go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Kane. I'm the Vice Chair of Pinellas County Schools. Nice to meet you.
Good morning, Laura Hine. Nice to see you.
Good afternoon. My name is Caprice Edmond.
Hello, Nicole Carr. Nice to meet you.
You know,
Well,
Kathy.
last time we went that way.
I know, but Kathy, we're going
Hi,
to.
Kathy Haug. Nice to meet you.
Hello, Mr. Ramirez. My name is David Kapersky. I'm the school board's attorney. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Bill Dudley, school board member.
Hello, I'm Carol Cook.
And we've met, I'm Eileen Long, chairman. We have some key staff in the room, and I'm just going to call their names so you know who they are. We have Dr. Bill Corbett, Jennifer Dull, Chief Strategy and Impact Officer, Beth Harradine, Director of Strategic Communications, Dr. Gonzalez, and Stephanie Woodford, both area superintendents, and Ajory Spencer. He is our performing arts specialist. So, all right, here's the review process and time schedule for board interview. You have 75 minutes for our board interview this afternoon. You will have 3 minutes to provide an opening statement. Each board member will ask a series of thematically based questions, things like student achievement, culture, etc. And each board member is allocated 9 minutes and is prepared to ask up to 4 questions. The number of questions each gets to will depend on the length of your response. And you will have time at the end for final thoughts and questions for us. So we will start with giving you the floor for 3 minutes for any opening comments or thoughts you may have.
Sure. So good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chair and distinguished board members. It truly is an honor to be here before you for this opportunity to potentially be the next superintendent of Pinellas County Schools. Really excited. This morning's conversation has just really validated exactly that, as I look and learn about the district, it was so great to not only just as I read about it, now to see it in action. So really excited about that. I do have something I'd like to just share. I'll give it to our board secretary too, which is just, for me, it's an entry plan into Pinellas County and how I might be thinking about my first 100 days as I enter. So just wanted to give you an opportunity to take a look at just some of my initial thinking. It does lack and does not have one critical piece, which is your voice. I talk about in that plan, this truly is a partnership with the board and the superintendent. So your voice around that is absent. So I really want to get feedback from you if I could be so fortunate to be selected as your next superintendent. So I wanted to give you that. And I would just open and say, as I shared in my video, I am Michael Ramirez, as you know. I currently serve as deputy superintendent in Denver Public Schools. And just excited. I'm a values-based leader who's grounded in relationships, family, and really my faith are really strong. My story begins at home. 2 amazing Puerto Rican parents who raised me and my brothers and sisters. I'm one of 5. I'm the middle of 5, so we'll leave it there. I'm a middle child. So, but really and my parents really valued the importance of education growing up. So I saw that and just the power of education. And so while my parents valued that, they didn't always know how to navigate that system. So, and I feel like that is the story, not only my story, but the story of so many of our students and our parents around just how to navigate that system. And so I coasted through school, really as that invisible child. I wasn't on the radar on the high end or on the low end and just really just kind of working through. And so I coasted. That was until 11th grade, my 11th grade liberal arts math teacher who really saw in me something I didn't and really did not allow me and would not allow me to coast and just continue and to really invest in me. And so, it's her influence that I'm still connected with today that has really set me off to a trajectory that 32 years later, here I stand before you, day one ready to step into Pinellas County Schools in this amazing district. I have to stop and just pause and say, this is an incredible district with so much, not only history, but just the work over the last 10 years with our retiring superintendent, Dr. Grego, is just truly amazing. And to be able to see that work, and as I think about coming in, so I'm driven by my story, my personal story that I do feel is the story of so many of our students and our parents. And I've been, worked in two of the largest school districts in the country, Broward County Public Schools and Denver Public Schools, battle tested through some of the most difficult, challenging times, most recently the COVID pandemic and working through all those pieces. But I'm just excited. I believe in the power of education. I believe in every child deserving the opportunity for high quality education. I'm just excited to share a little bit of my journey, a little of my story with you this afternoon. Thank you.
All right, well, we're going to begin with Dr. Carr.
Welcome, hello.
Hello.
I'm going to ask you questions in the area of student achievement and accountability.
Okay.
So first off, what are important elements in an accountability model for a school and a district?
Sure. So I would say, and when you talk about an accountability model, I think that a critical key component is a progress monitoring system to ensure that we know exactly where we are. So I'm one who's grounded in, sometimes the old coach in me comes out. I need to know what the score is, right? So what's the score and how we're doing and how we're progressing through. So an accountability system that, one, has strong progress monitoring systems in place around that also has specific supports to know how our students doing on an ongoing, regular basis. So, and really looking at when you talk about really being continuous and improving the work that we're doing, in that model is just really critical to be able to know. So I would say the progress monitoring and ultimately for the supports to schools, and that there's an alignment to, obviously we are grounded in our district strategic plan, so making sure that all of that alignment is there in support of our students, and is one that we think about how we support schools and what that looks like.
Okay, thank you. How will you work with leadership in Tallahassee to support the development of a new accountability model?
Sure. So the easy answer I would say is proactively, right? Being number one is going to be really important as your superintendent to be a presence and to be visible and to be an advocate for Pinellas County Public Schools and for our students. So when I think about how that would look, it would be first and foremost, I mentioned relationships, grounded in building relationships with our local leaders, with our legislators to really understand and be able to support and be able to make sure that Pinellas County and our voice is at the table when we're making decisions. What are the impacts, and to be able to have that conversation. I know that the current context collectively across, not only in the state, but across the country is one where there are polarities on both sides, right? And I'm just one in my grounded in relationships to really believe in where do we find common ground, grounded in students first, like what's best for our students and being able to ensure that we're advocating for that. So being a presence there, knowing that I'm sure Pinellas County, like many districts, goes up to Tallahassee, whether we have legislative days, and just being an active presence. But most importantly, building a proactive, positive working relationship, agreeing, to be able to have a seat at the table, to be able to advocate, to speak on behalf of, and provide the lived experience within districts. Many times, as we see laws, legislation, bills that come forward, that voice and just that perspective from a district. So it's going to be really important that I, as your superintendent, I will advocate, I will be present, and that would look like, regular visits, whether that be to Tallahassee as well as locally, to ensure that we are building that positive working relationship and that Pinellas County is accounted for in the conversation as we think about any type of impacted legislation.
Thank you. How will you support schools in understanding the new state accountability model?
So I would, with the new state accountability model, knowing as we're transitioning to the best standards and really looking at what that would look like, it's going to be, I know that there are upcoming opportunities to, whether it be, with the Department of Education around just informing and knowing all of the intricacies, knowing that there still are some pieces that are not yet flushed out, I would say, but working to make sure that we provide the right opportunities for engagement with school leaders, with district staff around what does that look like, to understand what are the impacts, and then how do we make it PCS, right? How do we make it Pinellas County around, just as we think about the progress monitoring, the ongoing progress monitoring 3 times a year, and we look at what those standards look like, and the development. I have looked at and seen a lot of the plans here in Pinellas County around intentional professional development for staff, for school leaders. I know there's an upcoming session that school leaders in Pinellas County will be accounted for to learn and hear more about what those standards are, but really intentional staff development and really ongoing around, we don't have it all figured out, and just kind of understanding what are the implications, what will that look like for here in the district, and make sure that our leaders are clear, that our teachers know. A lot of times, it's really, my commitment is to take away the unknown, right? Let's put it on down around what it looks like, what is it, what is it not, and how do we really put those two pieces together to really understand, to make sure that our school leaders, our teachers, and our district staff are well aware on that. And I know that Pinellas County is well on the way, looking at the alignments around, there's been intentional work around, preparing for the alignment, coming from FSA, coming from all of our current pieces to really align to the best standards. I know a lot of that work has already been happening here, and is to come in the summertime, just by looking at the our funding model and the plans that we submitted to the state around just the professional development. So intense professional development to make sure that our staff and our leaders are clear around what the expectations are, and that we're transparent as an organization around where we are and what we want to do and what we hope to acclaim, ultimately to maximize student outcomes for our students.
Okay, thank you. And our last question in this area: how will you measure district success beyond the state grading system?
That's a great question. And when you think about, state grading is just one piece of it. And I would say when we look at district success, I think I would reference, in my entry plan, I look at 4 areas that is circular on purpose, right? So it's governance team, and then it's about our organizational capacity, finance, and the alignment. Then it's student achievement, and then it's community. So what I would share is that reciprocal piece of how I think about this work and how I would lead Pinellas County is in those areas, ensuring we have an aligned board and superintendent, a governance team that's aligned to our strategic plan and the expectations that you have of me as a superintendent, and making sure that those pieces are in place. But in addition to that, the relationships that we have, obviously centrally looking at the alignment to support our schools and community. Community is an important part of the equation around measuring the success, whether that be ongoing two-way dialogue and collaboration around that. Part of my approach in my entry is around being visible. So the visibility and being in the community and really diving in all into Pinellas County will be an important piece of measuring and being able to do that. In my current role, we measure success outside of accountability, obviously ongoing surveys with parents and students, ensuring that we have student voice in that, our community partners, and engaging and being present and having two-way opportunities and progress monitoring that. This doesn't happen by chance, so ensuring that we have the means to be able to progress monitor. So that would look like board workshops, board retreats, to really engage in like how we are doing outside of the student achievement aspect of the district, knowing that there will be an opportunity because the progress monitoring will allow us to take some looks throughout the course of the school year, but all these other pieces will be really important in leading the district.
Okay, I will be asking the next 4 questions on culture that promotes learning in a safe environment. How do you ensure climate assessment results are used in school improvement planning across the district?
Yeah, assessing, the culture and climate is really that's an integral part of leading an organization and leading Pinellas County. So what I would share is how would I ensure that would be ongoing. It would look like ongoing conversations across the district, right? I would, when you look at climate surveys and being accessible, but ensuring that I have the right structures to be able to engage with all of our stakeholders, with our schools, with our students, with our community, with our business partners. Pinellas Education Foundation is an amazing foundation here in Pinellas County. So ensuring that I am engaging and really attuned to that. And also surveying. I mean, we coming from a district where we have, where we assess the culture and climate on a quarterly basis in assessments, in looking at how that's going, and we'll review survey data. It's discussed at the highest levels of the organization, at executive leadership, and really looking at what can we do ongoing. So it would be a commitment to a continuous improvement, to continuously look at what the culture, the climate is, the safety piece here, and ultimately I would end with the safety piece of our district and of our students and our staffs will and always will be my top priority, ensuring that, because as I shared earlier with you, you mentioned in my video, if students don't feel safe and teachers don't feel safe, students can't learn and teachers can't teach, and ensuring that piece. So it's ongoing and being present. I mean, I will be visible in schools. I will be present in schools. I will be present in the community, really leaning into having a pulse on, I will not lead from my office. I will lead in the community. I will lead in schools, along with, and I say along with our incredible team here in Pinellas County.
Describe how you have handled a situation where an employee was failing to perform at expected levels.
Think about a couple of different ones. I would say, I believe that when you talk about employee performance and where team members are, having open, honest dialogue and conversation about their performance is key, right? And with that, I would share that the feedback, like having feedback loops around like how that's going. I can think of a particular employee who was failing to align to. I came into my current role. I came into in Denver, took over, the school's division team, and really I worked really hard to build coherence across. We are a structure that manages, similar to Pinellas, 6 regions across the entire city. So building coherence around that. And I had a team member who just was not buying into that vision around just the coherence and wanting to do things outside of the vision that we were trying to accomplish. So the how, first is open communication, having clear expectations and clarity of vision around where and what we're trying to do as a team. And then ongoing. So what did that look like? It looked like bi-weekly check-ins. I meet bi-weekly with my direct reports and having conversation, and also developing a plan. I'm not talking about a performance plan, but expectations, and being consistent in the messaging, and also following up with that individual around just not only the what's not, but the why. But also leaning into like, what am I missing, right? It's not just about like you're not doing something, but really understanding like the why around it. And sometimes and for me, it was about really providing more clarity, understanding, and clearly sharing my expectations around what needed to happen. That ultimately, the happy ending to the story is that the employee bought into the vision around just building that coherence. And just to share a little bit, it was really important for me that we operated, as I led a division across 6 regions, that we operated as one district, not 6 districts. So the importance of not everyone doing the same, but everybody buying into the support, because it's important that particularly in my current role with principal supervision, principals receive the same level of support. It's going to be differentiated by leadership styles and all those pieces, but just that alignment, but open, honest conversation, regular check-ins, and providing feedback, and then also, walking the walk, taking, being a part of a day with that employee and just kind of understanding and building, those were really key pieces to how I held that individual accountable.
Okay. What are the benefits and drawbacks to school having autonomy from each other? And what is the appropriate level of autonomy versus district processes and procedures?
So there's always this healthy, I say this healthy tension with school districts and school leaders now. And I joke with I joked with one of the teams earlier. You know, I am what I believe is a former high school principal who infiltrated central office, and I managed, you know, essentially and kind of looked through. So the school-based perspective is something that I say that because it's really important to me to maintain that school-based perspective. I can't take the school principal out of me in my leadership. So, but I think that the right balance really is really being clear. I currently work in a district where we are working through and struggling through what that balance was over the course of the last number of years. That has shifted from one where there was a lot of autonomy to leaders to really trying to give a little bit more direction. So when you think about, or when I think about the balance of what that looks like, I use the term, it's got to be the just right balance, right? Principals at the end of the day, the magic happens in our classrooms and happens in our schools. So regardless of what great idea we collectively have for schools, if there's not buy-in at the school leadership level, I don't care what the initiative is, it's going to be really difficult to actually have that happen in a district. So being able to be, and I think a big piece of that balance is ensuring that principals have voice at the table when decisions are made and when we're thinking through things, ensuring that there is some level of principal voice in that process as we think about that balance. And I think that I'm a leader who, you know, the results that happen, you dictate, you know, that autonomy around the level of success of a school or not. If something, you know, if it's not broke, I'm not going to try to fix something that's not broken, but really provide the just right supports. But what I know is that school leaders, regardless of what level and regardless of where they are on the continuum of their development, school leaders don't turn away support that's going to help them. That I know as a former school leader, and so that puts the pressure back on a central office to ensure that the supports we are providing are ones that are support to schools, and it's a value add. You know, I know that as a former principal, my supervisor, the value add that it brought as the deputy superintendent in schools, the value add that we bring around the supports, ensuring that all those things. But the autonomy piece around, you know, what do the results say around, you know, if the success has to be there with the data. The data has to support the success. Because I could feel really good walking in a school, but if students aren't learning, then, you know, we have to have a conversation. So so the relationship, and that starts with the relationship, building the relationship so that we can go and have some honest, deep conversations, not questioning leadership, but questioning the approach and what supports are needed. So I think it's the just right supports, you know, and I think that, you know, school data, you know, and student performance is going to dictate what that is.
Thank you. It's time to move on to Ms. Edmond.
So I'll be asking you questions related to equity with excellence for all. How do you balance the need for educational equity with the current public criticisms of equity?
That's a great question. That's you know, that's yeah, that is our current reality of what we're living each and every day. And I think I would say first and foremost, keeping it grounded in what's best for our kids, like students first. I am, you know, what you get, you know, from me as your superintendent is one who is grounded in our kids. I'm about students and really ensuring that. And when I say students, all students, right? So when you talk about educational equity, the belief that that opportunity and access for all kids, and ensuring that we're able to balance that and elevate that, whether that be within our system, you know, in the community, at the state level, to ensure that we are balancing those messages. But when we talk about that equity for excellence, ensuring that. We look at all of our schools, right? We look at, and we allow the data to tell the story. This is not about pulling one particular group or elevating one or making one feel worse than the other, but really looking at all of our students and ground those conversations in data. What does the data say about the experience? And it's not just academic data, survey data, conversations, I'm all in around ensuring that when we talk about that student piece, you, as a part of my superintendency, student focus groups and my presence with students. I mentioned in the plan a student superintendent cabinet to really engage in. I want to hear from students and their experiences. I also want to hear from alumni from Pinellas County Schools about what is their experience around, to be able to do that and really just advocate. But also, it's also being bold. Like, you have to be bold, and we got to do right by our kids. Right, and really being clear about where our vision is, where we want to go, staying true to that, but also embracing the reality of having to navigate some of those, not compromising what you believe. I stand before you as a leader of color, and I take great pride in that. As someone born of two amazing Puerto Rican parents, my experience in schools, I can't take that out of who I am as a leader. And I believe in all kids. I believe in all kids and the opportunities that we have to, and it's our responsibility, because if not us, who?
Thank you. How do you balance the needs of special populations such as ESE students, ELL students, and students traditionally referred to as gifted and talented? What have you done to address the diverse needs of student populations in your district?
Yeah. So thank you for that question. I think that when we talk about the work, and I say all kids, it's all student populations. I don't use the term subgroups because I don't think anybody's a sub of anything. So I use student groups when we talk about, like, who are the student groups, and we look at the various populations and ensuring that it first starts with looking at the alignment of our resources to make sure that we have the right pieces in place and the supports in place for our schools to ultimately support our students around that with our, whether it's English language learners, ESE, our exceptional student, or gifted and talented. In my current role, I've done a couple of things. As a part of a board resolution, the board resolution in February 2019 passed a Black Excellence Resolution Plan, and it was calling out the academic achievement of our Black students in my current district in Denver that were not performing where their peers were. And really, it was about it was a bold move on the school board's part, and so my role was to ensure that schools had plans, and all of our schools developed what are called Black Excellence Plans. That's the context in Denver, to ensure that they had plans to address the disparities, not only with our Black students, but within that group, students with disabilities that were a high population within that context around that, to aggressively look at that. With our gifted and talented, I did we had data that was showing that we weren't, we had populations that were not part of, that were not identified. So really looked at our systems of how that early identification of gifted and talented students at the youngest grades, kindergarten, first, second grade, and ensuring that there weren't barriers, or we didn't have gatekeepers to not allowing students to come into, our gifted and talented, and really growing that was really a priority. And with our English language learners, I brought to Denver, similar to what I brought here to the state of Florida, a program called Latinos in Actions. And Latinos in Actions is an intentional program to build supports for our English language learners in a model that's a model that incorporates all, not just English language learners that are current, but exiting students, and really being able to advocate. And it was a program grounded in 3 pillars: literacy, service, really, and college and or career, and really engaging not only the students and also their parents, but giving them a stage to be able to excel, because all of our student populations. All of our students bring amazing talents and skills to our schools every day. It's our responsibility to create the conditions and the stage for them to shine, and that's work that I've done. And with our ESC population, working on our transition program, particularly from kids exiting out in high school in that 18 to 21, and ensuring that we have the right supports and job opportunities and job coaches to support, is some of the work that I've done.
Should you become the next superintendent, what intentional measures will you take to ensure that all existing students faculty, and staff, as well as students of the future, will be exposed to a system that is dedicated to excellence and equity?
So I believe that I am an equity champion, and I know that, a lot of the work around equity here in Pinellas has been grounded in that, really closing achievement gaps and working through, all of those pieces. And as your next superintendent, my commitment is to continuously look at and evaluate all of our programs, all of the aspects of our district, so that all of our students, have the opportunities. I've been so impressed with Pinellas County. I mean, the incredible work that has happened here over the last 10 years, and Dr. Grego's leadership, I mean, you should be commended. I mean, it's been incredible work. And there's work to be done, right? We are, I like to say pleased but not satisfied, right? We are pleased with where we are, but we have so much more to go. And there's a lot of pressure in that question, right? Like the future and what that looks like. But I mean, examining programs and opportunities and access, right? When we say all kids, right? Is it all kids, right? Do we mean, yeah, it's great we have something and we identified 800 students that and we got 90,000 plus students around that. So we need to look at program. My commitment is to use data to drive those decisions. I'm a data-driven leader, so I want to look at data when we talk about programs. What do the enrollment in programs look like? I mean, do we have, are there things that we can look at to ensure that we're meeting the needs of all? And then a circular two-way communication around the experience our students have. I think that what I have found sometimes in other districts, not in this district, but in other districts, sometimes we leave out some voices at the table that need to be at the table. So my commitment is to ensure in that journey that those voices that many times have been missing in other places, I want to make sure that they are at the table here around just the conversations, the supports, the programs, and all those things. And it's about being bold. I mean, being bold and taking chances. If there's something that's going to help our kids, when I look at programs, I see all the amazing things that are happening, and there's still more work to be done around that. And when we talk about all of our students, and really leaning in and providing those opportunities.
Okay, let's move to the next section, which is Mrs. Kane.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon.
Man, all right there. Thank you. I'm going to be asking a couple of questions on career and college readiness.
Okay.
So the first question is, can you give us examples of previous efforts and involvement with career technical education, dual enrollment, and other specialized programs, and what have you initiated to improve or expand on these types of programs?
Sure. So I'll answer that twofold in 2 minutes, right? So I'll give you a minute in Broward, a minute in Denver. But in my current role in Broward County, I led specific work with our career technical education department to expand programming. I mentioned I'm a high school principal, and I understand it's important. I mean, we talk about career and college, right? It's not just college, so that the career piece. So the expansion and the growth of CTE programs collectively across the district in high schools, as I led the high schools in the district, bringing additional programming, whether it be gaming, an intentional focus on coding, engineering, growing those programs. As a high school principal, I proudly boasted one of the high schools that had the most CTE programs. One of the high schools that had some of the most course offerings for CTE, because I understand the value that it brings, as well as the industry certifications and the connections to that. So I did that work there. I also expanded the work around career technical dual enrollment, partnering with our tech colleges around just ensuring that those students providing opportunity. In one case, bringing a virtual mobile auto lab to a school and being able to do that experience around automotive and mechanicking. I got 45 seconds. On the other side, in Denver, I talk about and I think about the opportunities around expanding dual enrollment. We have shifted in Denver where prior to my arrival, the students graduating high school, the criteria was just grades and credits. And that was the only, and so the state shifted over the last couple of years, where now there is, similar to Florida, there is a competency reading demonstration or English language and math, right? So and we found ways to increase, because it's called concurrent enrollment, but it's dual enrollment here in Florida. But it's the same concept around expanding those programs, because course offerings, if students that successfully passed those courses met that requirement. So growing and increasing the number of concurrent enrollment opportunities and dual enrollment, in my current role in Denver was something that I've done to be able to help meet the graduation rate there, working directly with the Community College of Denver, with the new president, who actually was a colleague as a principal here that actually went out there. So Florida is producing all kinds of leaders that's leading out there as well, and partner with CCD to be expand course offerings in career in dual enrollment for our students. And we've seen significant growth, particularly in underrepresented populations that traditionally wouldn't have been exposed to dual enrollment, are now exposed and meeting that requirement. So.
Absolutely. I'm going to skip down a little bit. What is your vision for Pinellas County School District's career and college readiness within 5 years, if you were to be selected?
So my vision within 5 years, I'll start early, is to say, one, I want to really, while I've read it and seen and heard, I want to make sure I have a clear picture, an understanding of where we are, and recognizing that with what I'm about to say, there are a lot of different pieces that have to come into play. But my vision would be that the course offerings right now within the career technical, those arenas, we have programs at schools, right? But they're not the same programs at all schools. So students have to choose and pick where. Yesterday I met a parent. I was hanging out at Largo High late. I wasn't stalking anything, but I was just walking around. I happened to meet a parent. Her name is, I believe, is Melanie. Has 2 students, one who's a 10th grader in the IB program at Largo, and one who has a senior who's graduating from Dunedin. And so she shared about the programs, celebrated those offerings, but that she's got to go to this school for this program, and and it's a neighborhood school. So when you talk about what my vision would be, is ensuring that we have a menu, like we can create just a model that every school, there's always going to be some programs that there's only one auto lab or 2 auto labs, but some programs where we have a base that all of our schools have specific course offerings around that, and that we continue to grow them. Like, we need to look not only around the state, but around the country and around the world around what programs and offerings, by student interest, and really be able to grow the programs. But ultimately, that our schools, that we would be a district that if there were certain programs that required transportation to get to, but that all of our secondary, so all of our high schools would have, many of the same programs to attract within the neighborhood. So it wouldn't force a student to have to travel, across, north or south to get to a program that they really want, because that is an attractive piece that I've heard over and over again that is elevated. So it's just a vision around growing those. That will be pouring into Perkins dollars and a lot of other pieces, but that at a high level, that's where I'll be thinking about.
How would you expand local community partnerships to support and enhance and bolster our CTE programs?
Starts with the relationship, being visible, making sure that I'm out, engaging, serving on boards of our local organizations. I know, Pinellas Education Foundation and other local organizations, but building the relationship and really being visible and a presence to be able to share what is the need, and how do we partner, how do we leverage, how do we bring more to our students around that. So just leveraging and providing the opportunities to engage, not only engage in conversation, but engage in opportunity around student internships, opportunities, exposure for our students. All of those pieces will be really, really important in doing that.
We're going to now move on to Mrs. Hine.
Hi, Mr. Ramirez. I'm going to be asking you questions around effective and efficient use of resources. To start with, from a district perspective, explain how student performance standards affect planning and prioritizing for facilities, fiscal, technological, human resource projects, all the different pieces the district has to consider. So how those priorities happen around student achievement. And then also in difficult financial times, how might those priorities change, or how would you prioritize things?
Yeah. So what I would share is when you talk about the priorities, obviously, everything is in support of our students and student achievement. And looking at when you talk about operations, budget, all of those pieces, ensuring that all of our resources are pointed towards that student achievement, that we are putting our dollars with what matters the most, which is our kids, our students. So looking at systems to make sure that we are aligned there. So I think it starts with our governance team, the board, around really clearly identifying the priorities that we have already done so through our strategic plan and what those 7 priorities, I believe they are, and just kind of really leaning into those, but understanding them, but also aligning it. So really looking at all of those systems that point ultimately to outcomes. And really, we have to make sure that the system is aligned to get the maximum student achievement results. So making tough decisions and trying to address a lot of those things is a part of it, right? So, because it truly takes a village, the operational pieces, the finance, it starts with the board and ensuring that our strategy, strategic plan, our resources, everything is aligned to be able to do that. And then when you talk about in hard times, how do we make hard decisions? My grounding principle would be to keep as far away from the impact to the classroom as possible. And when you think about what is going to most impact our students around that, and prioritizing decisions using that grounding principle, right? So looking at like where, what is most impactful. And again, I understand like it's everything, right? It's all of it. So how do you prioritize those pieces around that? Knowing that most of the resources is people, and understanding that touch and what that may look like. But my grounding principle will be around keeping things that least impact the classroom around that, knowing that, and making some tough decisions, whether it's around transportation, how we look at, how we get creative around things. And I know it kind of directly impacts to like other programs and things like that. But I mean, keeping things as close to away from the classroom would be a grounding principle.
Tell us about the last large critical budgetary decision that you made. What was the situation? What decision did you make? Who did you involve in that? What kind of information did you gather to support that decision? And then what kind of impacts did it have, positive or negative, potentially downstream? Large budgetary decision.
Sure. So we face a pretty significant budgetary challenge in this COVID pandemic in Denver. And I would say as deputy superintendent, decisions that are made, like there's not a decision around our district that I'm not at the table being a part of and really engaging in those. And so when you talk about the financial implications, we had a deficit of about 10 or 11 million, dollars per division. It was actually a collective total of about $67 million deficit coming from state funding that promised yet not received, right? So I know that doesn't happen here, but I mean, other places it does. So I mean, just looking at what that, and so we had to go through some critical pieces where we went through an exercise. I led an exercise around looking at what potential impacts to division budgets, working directly with our chief financial officer around a 3% cut, a 5% cut. What impacts would that have on, on schools? And the decisions were grounded in what I shared earlier, keeping it away from schools as much as possible, keeping schools whole and finding a way to do things centrally. What it equated to was having to have some difficult conversations and have a reduction in some staff. We were fortunate enough to be able to do that with a lot of our vacant positions and not actually having to impact that. But the other piece was ensuring that we protected, our reserves, right? Knowing the critical piece, like having a healthy reserve is, the financial health of a district is so critical there. So ensuring that we stayed away from that. So we were able to peel back. I mean, we're a district in Denver that traditionally has lived at about a 10 to 11% reserve, knowing what the requirements are and moving that down to forecasting that out over a couple of years, went down to about 8%. But it required cuts. It required every part of the divisions across the district to make tough decisions around staffing, knowing that so much of it is people, and we were able to do that in a way that didn't impact schools. So it didn't impact schools around that, but it was one that took a lot of folks around the table having conversation. My work is around collaborating with as many people as possible before making decisions around that. So.
Thank you. There are many resource investments that drive student achievement, and we know that at the very top is the quality and commitment and joy of our teachers. Our responsibility is to recruit and retain and inspire the best and brightest. Share with us what you know and some of your thoughts regarding rapidly rising costs of living in Pinellas County, how we can financially address that, paralleled with the fact that we have lower teacher compensation per capita here in the state of Florida compared to other states.
Yeah, rapidly, and they're rapidly increasing in Denver too. It kind of seems like it's happening everywhere as well, and that's a reality. That's a current reality that we face around, not only the retention and retaining our teachers. I would say first and foremost, we got to start with our current teachers. Like we can't lose our own teachers. So we got to make sure that we are taken care of. Sometimes in other districts, you will find that we exert efforts trying to get, and we forget to take care of our own. So making sure that we are really addressing and taking care of, our teachers, knowing that, recently, contract was settled, and all those pieces are really important parts of this puzzle. But working to, invest in our own current teachers around that and really making sure that we stay competitive. And then also thinking creatively about housing opportunities. I mean, as you explore districts across the country, they are doing some creative things around, affordable housing for teachers, being able to try to provide I don't sit here promising any of that, but those are the types of things we need to be looking at. Is like, how do we get creative around those opportunities? Our benefits, I know our healthcare benefits here, are phenomenal and just kind of work through. And there's our raising cost of that. So there's a cost associated with that as well. But ensuring that we have those supports and that we're out recruiting and being able to be a part of that, and then working with our community. Again, working back a question earlier, working with our legislators around understanding the impacts and what type of potential advocacy we can give around relief for our teachers, so that they could have this career that is so rewarding, and also be able to afford and live a life that is well worth it. So.
Imagine for us that you could design from the ground up what the resources for having the best planning for college, career, and life in Pinellas County would look like. How would those resources be distributed? What would that look like? Would it be different than what we're doing now? Where would those plus and minus deltas be? And how could you lead us through a process like that? We just have a couple minutes for this last question.
I would say I would start at the bottom up, really looking at, we're currently doing incredible things around those opportunities, but I think college career, that starts way earlier than doesn't start in 10th, 11th, 12th grade. It starts at the earliest from birth, and really creating a system that has some of the supports that you see, because I'm taking it that there's no budget for it, but we're going to have a budget and obviously work through that. But what will that process be around engaging parents? Parents as they enter kindergarten aren't thinking about high school. I have a kindergartner coming in, so I get that. So we're not thinking about that, but just that trajectory of the support to ensure that we're aligned and that we have benchmarks along the way. What does college readiness look like for a third grader? What does college readiness look like for a fifth grader? What is college, like building it up so that there's an expectation, and we build a culture of expectation around our students, being prepared for career, college, and life.
On to Mrs. Cook now.
All right. My area is communication and stakeholder engagement. So when a new superintendent is hired, you want to make the transition as smooth as possible for everyone. How would you help both the educational community and the community at large to adjust to a new governing style that would come with a new superintendent?
Yeah. I think first and foremost is understanding the previous governing style. So really investing in this plan, you will see spending significant amount of time with retiring Superintendent Grego and understanding what has that style been, because this is less about me and more about ensuring that it's meeting the needs of our district, our community, and really adjusting there. So I would say first and foremost, investing time to really understand it is going to shape my approach to it. And there is so much about Pinellas County that aligns to just how I lead and how I think about just students and the work that's happening. But the visibility and building the relationship, it would be grounded in relationships. When I think about how I would do it, I'm grounded, and you'll see it in here. love, listen, lead, love, listen, learn, lead, right? So loving the community despite our differences and understanding those pieces and finding common ground, a commitment to listen, to learn, and understanding how that, how those two things, I would want to listen to learn all the great and where are their opportunities, and ultimately to lead, to make the tough decision and work through that together with a team around that. But the visibility and building the relationship first and foremost would be my commitment that you'll see in a lot of the work that I outlined here.
Good, thank you. How would you ensure that the school board is informed on important matters? And then how would you inform the public on important matters, as well as then how do you inform staff on important matters?
So communicate, right? You can't communicate enough. I haven't been in a district that said this district's guilty of over-communicating, right? So making sure that we communicate at all levels, first and foremost for our governance team, for the board, no surprises for you, and making sure that you are well aware of any and all decisions. I mean, those communication pieces will look like one-on-one time, establishing the time that we have together. It's going to be important early on in my first 30 days. We need time together, a board retreat to really understand what are the expectations around a community, like our communication, what is that communication going to look like first and foremost? Because as one of your employees, making sure that you have that comfort level on our communication and building that one-on-one, weekly, bi-weekly, whatever that cadence is, but we would develop that, and then making sure that the communication that there's a cascade of information that is timely, that actually is accurate, and we actually build out that process. So we're looking at, I would want to spend some time looking at, I referenced in here, a communications audit, understanding what do the communications currently look like in that cascading, but it's important that our board knows and is well informed of the decisions and the rationale, as well as then our district staff and school leaders, and that cascading of information will be really important. But it would start with my communication with the board and our development of that relationship and that communication, and from there build out and cascade it down to staff, and then community.
Okay, good, thank you. This is a diverse community, and how would you work to ensure all groups are fully engaged with the schools and the system as a whole? And also, how would you work with special interest groups?
Yeah, so the diversity of this community is another piece that attracts me to this community, and really being able to be a part of that. And I shared earlier, ensuring that intentionally looking to have all voices at the table in conversations. Early on in my entry, I call them, listen to learn sessions. Like I want to go out and listen and really to learn what actually is happening, and look for. And one of my leading questions is, I have 4 questions, but one of the leading questions is there anybody or any other group that I haven't talked to that you think I should speak to? So making sure that all those voices are represented there around that. And then when you talk about special interest groups, proactively building a relationship with them, right? I am grounded in relationships. I'm a relationship leader and just grounded there, and just being able to be proactive in building those relationships and understanding where the advocacy is, regardless of, and ensuring that, how do we find the common ground so that the advocacy aligns to our vision of where we're going as a district.
Okay, good, thank you. What has been your role and experience in working with the legislative delegation, and what should the role of superintendent look like in that relationship?
Sure. So I'm fortunate that in Denver, we're actually in the state capitol, and the capitol is 3 blocks from the district office. So what has it looked like in my experience has been a proactive one. Our legislative team, like we meet weekly to address like the impacts of bills and the impacts of things that are coming down the pike, so that we stay proactively ahead of the advocacy to make sure that our voice is heard in that process. So as deputy superintendent in the school district, really being able to provide insight and experience, around our collective experience around and impacts of potential legislation has been what it looks like. It currently looks like that, and the role is one to be relationship first, that our local legislators and our legislator will know me as a superintendent in Pinellas County, to make sure that and wanting to build a relationship that we have to be able to as things come down, to be able to pick up the phone or send a text around, hey, what do you think about this? That is the current relationship that exists in Denver, where, things that are coming down, what are the impacts, say more, and then I delegate and ask other staff, because I don't have all the answers, nor do I know all the answers, but know who to ask and really ensure, let's get some perspective and make sure that our voice is heard, make sure that our perspective is shared, and that our legislators are informed when making a decision and what the impacts of those decisions would be here in Pinellas.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mine has to do with general leadership.
Okay?
And describe an accomplishment you are most proud of in your career.
So there are many, you asked, I'm just saying there are many, a number that I can ask for, but I think one of the ones I'm most proud of the work that I led in Broward, improving the district's graduation rate. As a high school co-director supervising high schools, came into the role and the graduation rate was 74%. Significant work to be done to really collect it. And I worked intentionally. I didn't do this work by myself. I did this work with an incredible team of people, but build a collaboration of high school leaders, because high school leaders was my direct touch, that competed on Friday nights, but that worked collaboratively together the rest of the time, right? Because if we have this winners and losers when data comes out, we're really talking about kids and other outcomes. So doing some intentional work, personalizing the educational experience for kids in our high schools, built intentional plans, set the stage for schools to develop those plans. Those plans didn't come from me. I created the conditions so that schools, teams can come together to develop what are those conditions that needed, school by school, because every school is a little different, and develop the personalization of that. Work to standardize in that process, work to standardize all of the 30 high schools on a schedule, on everyone on the same schedule. Not for uniformity, it had to be voted on by staff, so they had to buy in, and built in an intentional personalization period for students to be able to connect with, to ensure that a student had an adult advocate on their campus to be able to do all that and personalize that experience. That ultimately, over the course of the 7 years, that was 7 years worth of work with a lot of outside organizations. Some of it was funded through an I3 grant. We called it personalization for academic and social emotional learning, and it was called PASL, and really engaging in those conditions around that actually attributed to when I left the district, had at the time the highest graduation rate. I know Pinellas has the highest in the state currently, but it was at almost 87%, 86.5. But those 30 traditional high schools had a 95% graduation rate.
We have several quality finalists for this position. Why should the school board select you?
So I would agree. You have two other quality candidates, and I feel honored to be a part of that as well. What I would tell you is, so why me and why Pinellas, right? And I would tell you that as someone, who really raised here in Florida, and just the opportunities and I've seen here in my stories, I believe not only in the work that's happening here, and I'm all in. I shared earlier that the alignment of just who we are as a district here in Pinellas, and all of those components are ones that are so critical for us. And I feel like when you talk about the perspective, I am a leader, and what I would bring, right? I bring to you a leader 27 plus years in education, leading in two of the largest school districts in the country, battle tested in some of the most difficult situations, bringing and uniting communities together around common vision and common purpose. Not perfect, but I have a track record of being able to do that and address that in a way where people feel heard, valued, loved, and cared for. My commitment to coming to Pinellas would be to honor the last 10 years of incredible accelerated growth that's happening and building upon that. Why me? I feel like I bring a unique perspective from two other districts. I've seen the work done, And I'm so impressed with the work here and the opportunity, what I would say would be to pat and push, right? The opportunity to pat on the back all the great and then find the just right push around how do we get better, how do we do more. That's what you're getting, a leader who will be committed to coming here, really diving into the Pinellas County community and bring energy and passion in the name of our kids. And I am all about our students. And I shared in whether this is, I'm looking for the right community to fit into. I am not desperately seeking a superintendency. I love the work that I do. I want to be in a place where the community, a board, the governance team, where it's the perfect marriage of just, my skill set and what I bring to the table and what the district wants. And I feel I am that fit to be able to come in here and lead us into the future of public education.
Thank you. A superintendent handles a variety of responsibilities. Which do you feel most qualified to handle and why? And in what areas do you need the most support?
So I would say the one that I feel the most qualified for, right? So it would be just leading with a vision and purpose around just the work. Most importantly, leading this governance team and this board to continue to build on the great work that's been happening. I've been just so impressed with just the work here. I love the student voice and the bringing students to board meetings, to go into schools and really engage, because I think that so many times we, there's so much noise and sometimes we lose focus on what the main thing is, and having our kids come and elevate that piece is just so critical, and being a part of that. So I feel most confident around leading this district and leading our people, leading this board and providing the just right vision, complementing the amazing work that has happened, and being able to provide that just right leadership for where we want to go together. I feel comfortable and confident in my ability to do that. As you look at the area that was, work, I've done a lot, obviously, within the operations piece and looking at those pieces. I would say just not, we have an amazing CFO that I met earlier, and we engaged in around that. But when you talk about, some of the bond pieces and some of the capital piece around that, while I do have a vast amount of experience around making operational and academic decisions, growth around just learning that piece and learning the piece of that. I've been a part of a bond program to lead and do. I haven't led it myself, being a part of that. So that would be, in the finance arena of things, to be able to ensure that I have no doubt I can do that, but the ability and just the opportunity to gain that experience working with an incredible team.
And lastly, what is the most important part of the superintendent's job and why?
So I would say, for me, the most important job is to lead this board and provide the vision for this board around where we want to go, so then I can provide the right direction and vision to staff, to schools, to ultimately impact the outcomes for our students. I think, having that opportunity to lead, this is an incredible team, a very attractive team to join as a potential superintendent. I just want to name that. And just having watched it, it's like, you've been binge watching your favorite show on TV, right? Pinellas County School Board meetings, and now you get to meet the real life folks come to life here, right? And you meet them. But really, being able to provide that leadership for this board around that, continuing the great work, I think is so that I can provide the right direction, the just right direction for our staff to move us into the future, so that all students, so we really accomplish that 100% student success.
All right. We have some time left, so is there any additional information that you would like to share with the board members?
I don't know about additional information. I would share, as I've been talking about, just the great that is Pinellas County Schools, and I bring with me. I'm not alone in this, and these decisions for me are kitchen table conversations, right? So I bring a an amazing wife, and I bring 2 little girls with me to Pinellas County. I have an incoming kindergartner. She's in 4K right now in preschool and enjoying life, and I have one that's not. She's 6 months, so wish me luck. So, but I'm getting a lot of sleep, so we're good. But I say so. It's a family decision, right? And it's one where this is actually a 2-way interview, right? To know and have the right feel about whether this is it. But I mean, there is just so much to love about Pinellas, and that I've been reading about and now seeing to really love about wanting to come here, take root, and really lean in and build on the great and make it even greater, right? And build on that and partner with you in this work. And, in my journeys, I think what I would leave you with is, I mentioned, my grounding in relationships. I mentioned, how I lead and how I do things. The one thing that I didn't mention is that I bring my lunchbox to school every day, right? And what I mean by that is, a number of years ago, when I was teaching, one of my students gave me a lunchbox. There's a Joe DiMaggio lunchbox, right? So you could tell me what team I favor, but they gave me a Joe DiMaggio lunchbox, and it sat on my desk in the lunchbox, and coincidentally, it just became a place where I captured letters and notes and things that people have given me over the years, and the one lunchbox became 2 lunchboxes. A Derek Jeter lunchbox. I'll leave it there. So, but I mean, just in general. But and I carry those lunchboxes with me, and what they've become is a symbol of why we do the work, of my why, of why I do this work. And when I'm having a tough day, when it's a difficult meeting, when I'm nervous about what's to come, I close my door, I open my lunchbox, and I just kind of start looking at letters, pictures, to really understand the why. I've never gotten to the bottom. I've never gotten to the bottom till I'm recharged and I'm energized. So I lead with my why. I'm grounded in what that is, and that's how I would lead here in Pinellas County. So I'm just so appreciative of just this opportunity. Thank you for this opportunity. And I commend you for the incredible work that you and this staff have been doing here in the name of students. It is incredible, and I would be honored to serve as your next superintendent.
Do you have any questions for us?
I just have one question. If I was selected as your superintendent, what would be the first, the one or 2 priorities that you would want to make sure that I address as I enter the district?
I haven't really thought of that one.
I was going to say, you
Wanted to, Dr. Carr, you want to start?
I think establishing those relationships would be priority number 1, so that there would be the rapport built and trust developed within the district and within the community.
And I believe looking at the strategic plan, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, as well as what Dr. Carr mentioned, making sure you are connected with staff and aware of the metrics and the work that has occurred thus far.
I would say that that's 1 and 2. Meeting people, talking with them, hearing from them, getting the feedback, just as you mentioned, and then also being sure we're on the same page as far as our strategic plan, questions you have there, or thoughts you have there, to be sure we're going in the right direction.
I think one of the most important establishments is establishing what you're passionate about, what you believe in, and who you are. And I think that once people know that, they can get on board with the vision that you have for Pinellas County.
I'd say just about everything the rest have said, just to build relationships with the 7 of us and to know that we are here to support you. You can ask us questions. You can call upon us at any time, that we are here to make sure you are successful.
Mine would be to get to know the school board members and staff. Not just the relationship, but get to know the gifts and graces that each one brings. Everybody brings a different set of circumstances, and you need to know who you could call on when for what. And that may be with board members and definitely with staff, so that you get to know what they bring, because we have a tremendous cabinet that works with the leadership team, that works with the superintendent now, and they would be the wonderful team that's going to work with the incoming superintendent, and I'd want you to get to know them very well.
Got it, thank you.
Well, since you would be the face of Pinellas County Schools, everything everybody said, communication certainly is number one priority for me. I think there was a great movie one time, Cool Hand Luke. And what we have here is a failure to communicate. And every organization I've ever been in that's gotten in trouble, that's been why. They forget to communicate. And I think that is extremely important. And I think it's very important also what Carol was saying, that getting to know us so we get to know you, it's a back and forth thing. And staff, but then you're going to have to go out and be the face of the public. They're going to look at you. And I think those are the challenges to start with.
Thank you.
Well, we'd like to thank you for your interest and participation in this process. And you have 2 full days with the interviews, with the community meet and greet, the
Just 2?
tours, and more. Yes.
You add a third day? No, I'm not joking.
Now, tomorrow you will meet individually
Yes.
with us to have one-on-one interviews. So please let FSBA know if you have any questions or you need any concerns that they can help you with.
Thank you. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity, so good meeting you.